saying the United States saw an 18.1% increase in homelessness this year, with more than 770,000 people counted as homelessness. Now, this report coming out of the Department of Housing and Urban Development, they said that federally required tallies taken across the country in January of this year found that more than 770,000 people were counted as homeless, a number that misses some people and does not include those staying with friends or family because they do not have a place of their own. Nicole Christine there at Fox 10 Phoenix, she says she's working on a story zeroing in on stats and resources in Arizona. She says she has so far learned there was a 3.5% increase in people experiencing homelessness here in Arizona. LiveNOW look there over the Valley of the Sun in Phoenix. Well, we do have Nicole Christine standing by live. Let's bring her into the conversation here. Let's talk more about what she found. And Nicole, thanks for being with us. But this is just a really devastating number and such a meteoric rise from just last year. What did you find here in Arizona?
Yeah, thank you, Andrew, for joining me to talk about such an important topic. And what I want to start with is what one of the organization leaders I spoke with today said, which was that this is not something we're talking about the other. These people are not the other. These are people in our communities. They could be any one of us, and there are so many different ways that people experience homelessness, whether it's mental health, addiction, medical emergencies that drain your savings. I mean, there are so many reasons. And of course, something we can all relate to is the growing prices, and we have a really high eviction rate here in Arizona, the highest we've ever seen currently, and so many factors at play, and that makes the approach to helping people experiencing homelessness something that has to be multifaceted as well. So this is something that we really all should care about, and that was one of the messages that I learned today. Something that a lot of us think of, you know, every once in a while or maybe around the holidays. We should be thinking about this every single day. So we did put together a story, if we want to pull that up now, and give you a little bit more insight, and then we can kind of dive into some of the things that are talked about in the story as we go.
None of these statistics that are coming out are surprising.
A federal report out today shows an 18% increase in Americans experiencing homelessness. In Arizona, there are more than 14,000 people experiencing homelessness this year, a 3.5% increase from 2023.
The costs of living continue to outstrip what people are making, and we're seeing that we're at a bit of an inflection point here in Arizona as we are facing the highest eviction rate that we've ever had.
And more than a fifth of those experiencing homelessness in Arizona are families with children. Central Arizona Shelter Services CEO Nathan Smith says offering units for those in need to stay is one part of their approach, and the need is there.
We had a household of 10 people move in last week, so we get some pretty good-sized households. But then also when those families come to us, it's not just the heads of household and the family that need the case management services that we can provide. It's those children also.
And the senior population is also facing homelessness at a growing rate.
There is a prediction that the number of homeless people over 65 will triple by 2030.
That prediction, based on a study by researchers at several universities, is something Dr. Ellert says is already being addressed with a look at resources for those experiencing both memory care issues and homelessness. But Dr. Ellert says the cases he sees, from people experiencing medical emergencies that drain their savings to families being evicted due to higher rent, prove that homelessness can happen to anyone.
I think the more we can drive home that message, that these are not people that are the other. It's our community. It's us.
Yeah, pretty impactful there, the discussion that I had with some of these organization leaders, and they're working every single day, but they need some help, and they really want the larger population to be doing their own research, watching stories like these, listening to experts, and then getting out and volunteering. There are so many ways that you can do so, and there are so many organizations here in Phoenix, but really across the country, where you can help out. I know that Circle the City is one of those groups here in Phoenix, and they are actually working on a fundraising campaign to add an 84-bed respite center in the city. So that's going to be really helpful to people as well. So there's a lot of work being done, a lot of people on the front lines of this movement, but they need more people in the larger community to really step up and help out, volunteer, fundraise, do things like that to help people, because as we learn, you know, this could really happen to anyone.
And definitely Nicole Christine there live for us in Phoenix. Nicole, thanks for bringing us this story, especially from this angle particularly, and we'll talk soon.
Yeah. Okay, thank you so much, Andrew.
All right, in the meantime here, we are going to be bringing in some experts who study this issue and who study the policy impacts of this issue. But I want to note from the Associated Press, their article, their write-up on this, they say that among the most concerning trends was a nearly 40% rise in family homelessness. It's one of the areas that was most affected by the arrival of migrants in big cities. They say this, according to the report, family homelessness more than doubled in 13 communities impacted by migrants, including in Denver, Chicago, and New York City, while it rose less than 8% in the remaining 373 communities that they studied. So remember, we've covered that here on Live Now. There in Denver, New York, Chicago, the ongoing migrant crisis situation there, which leads us to our next segment there. My colleague, my friend Fox's Madeline Rivera, has a look at what the Trump transition, remember, we're just days away from the inauguration, what they intend to do when it comes to the illegal immigration crisis nationwide. And remember, the acting border czar who's going to be in place come January 20th, his name, Tom Homan, his plans for this. Let's watch.
Incoming border czar Tom Homan revealing aspects of his mass deportation plan.
We're going to shut the border down. We're going to have the largest deportation operation this country's ever seen.
Homan says the deportations will be carried out in a humane way and will not involve sweeps through neighborhoods, but instead focus on immigrants with criminal records. Homan telling the Washington Post that administration will build family facilities for migrants who came into the country illegally. The report reads in part, quote, U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement will look to hold parents with children in soft-sided tent structures similar to those used by U.S. border officials to handle immigration surges. He goes on to say that the government will not hesitate to deport parents that are in the country illegally, even if they have young U.S.-born children, noting it would be that family's choice on whether to be split up or to leave the U.S. together. This massive operation comes with a hefty price tag. Current projections show that at least 100,000 beds would be needed for detention, with Homan saying that they'll need at least $86 billion.
It's going to be expensive in the beginning, but in the long run, it's going to save billions of dollars of taxpayers' money.
All this as an undocumented migrant from Guatemala has been charged for lighting a woman on fire in a New York City subway.
We have sanctuary city laws that directly protect migrant individuals, not those people that are doing jobs and trying to get on with their life.
Homan also announced a plan to locate the more than 300,000 missing children who were lost after crossing the border. In Washington, Madeline Rivera, Fox News.
All right, back out live there to the White House. Let's talk about all of this and more, including this most recent report that saw quite a dramatic increase in homelessness this year in the United States. We want to bring into the conversation right now Stephen Matro with the University of Delaware. He studies this issue very, very closely, and he joins us. Stephen, thanks for being with us here. I know it's been a holiday week, and were we anticipating this report? I know HUD puts it out every year, but at this time?
HUD puts it out at this time, kind of sometime around the end of the year. I mean, the numbers are unprecedentedly high, so there's probably no accident that it came out on the Friday after Christmas.
Let's go into some of the causes. What has led to this rise, and what's the jump from the previous year? Do we have that statistic?
So back up a little bit. So this is a count of the homeless population that's done on a single night back in January of every year. And this is a nationwide count. So every locality organizes a count of how many people are homeless, and this is both going into shelters and other homeless services for the where the homeless population stays, and it also goes out into the streets and other places where people who are not in shelter, so where the unsheltered population stays. And then each locality has a count, and then those counts are put together and statistically adjusted so they have a comparable count of you know, so you can compare them for year after year. So it's a little bit like the unemployment count. I mean, in some ways it is an imprecise count, but it's the best data that we have, and it's data that gets, that where a lot of attention gets paid to it, and it's kind of a pulse on whether or not the homeless population is getting better or worse.
I see. So it's a snapshot in time, imperfect,
Exactly.
albeit. But I want to talk about some of the causes, though. The Associated Press kind of outlining in the report, family homelessness rose greatly, in part due to the ongoing illegal migrant crisis in some of these metropolitan cities like New York City, Denver, and Chicago. Also, they said disasters played a part in the rise in the count. How so?
Well, so the number that they have is about 770,000 homeless people were counted on that one night as, basically as being homeless. And that is an all-time high. Last year, there was also an all-time high of 653,000. So it jumped quite a bit. And basically, the numbers went up across the board. I mean, every single subpopulation, people who are unsheltered, the numbers went up. People who were sheltered, families, the numbers went up quite a bit. People who are single also went up. And so one of the driving factors, but not the only driving factor on why these populations went up, is the number of people who were, who were here on, basically, number of not undocumented. What's I'm blanking on? Basically, Thank you. Immigrants with temporary status who did not have a place to go. A lot of times these people, mostly families, got bused from southern states up into urban settings such as New York City. Especially in New York City, the numbers of people with temporary status basically overwhelmed an already stretched system. And so in some larger cities, they accounted for a large part of the increase, and we don't really know exactly how much, because this is kind of a new twist in the homeless population. There have traditionally not been this subpopulation within that, so we're not prepared to count that, and I'm sure that will change in subsequent years. And so that drove a good chunk of the rise, but even if you took that population out, the homeless numbers still would have gone up.
So, Stephen, I want to kind of draw out some links, and you tell me if maybe there are no links to this. But we had a really big Supreme Court ruling this year on the issue of homelessness, and particularly about what localities and municipalities can do when it comes to those who are unhoused in their communities, who don't have shelter. Essentially, they can kind of dismantle these encampments, and the like here. That was adjudicated all the way up to the Supreme Court. So you have that, and we heard from Gavin Newsom today, the California governor, kind of putting the onus on these local communities here. But then we see the rise. Is it discordant, or am I looking at two different things here? Are they disparate?
I think with the grants past Supreme Court decision, that basically gave localities leeway to clear out encampments and otherwise public presence of the homeless population. Basically, it made life on the streets more difficult. It made them more subject to criminal charges for things like trespass or illegal camping. But it was not necessarily a driver of the homeless population. This impacts people who are already homeless, and it may keep people from getting off the streets. It may keep people on the streets longer. So in that respect, it may contribute some to the increase of the population, but it's not likely to be a significant driver of the numbers. This is a lot more of, two factors. It's people who are, it's either more people coming into homelessness, or there's also maybe a factor where people are staying homeless longer. They're not able to get housing.
I see.
And that drives the number. And likely it's a combination of both of them. So, you have factors like, the housing supply in a lot of places is getting tighter. You have, housing costs, especially rents, have risen quite a bit. And those are likely to be contributing factors.
Stephen, just lastly, I mean, we cover this issue here on LiveNOW so much, especially in California. LA Mayor Karen Bass, California Governor Gavin Newsom, they have made it kind of the jewel of the crown of their policy objectives, this year specifically. And then we get a report like this. Is anyone doing it right? I know you study this very closely. Can you think of an individual, a group, a community that has a handle on this, or no?
I mean, I think if you want to look for a success story, what you would turn to is homeless veterans. Back in the Obama administration, the Department of Veterans Affairs made a concerted effort to end homelessness among veterans. And it never quite got to end it, but it kind of started on a process where the number of homeless veterans this year has gone down to 32,000, which from when we started work on the issue back in 2009, the number was about 75,000. So quite a dramatic drop, especially when you compare that to the overall increases that we've been seeing lately. And I think two things that have contributed to that. One is that that veterans are a population that people, they care deeply about. They have a political consensus around them, which is unusual, especially in homelessness. And also they have resources there, both for housing and for other assistance, including healthcare and mental health care assistance, where you get, you are homeless and you're a veteran, you're going to have a lot more access to resources than if you were not a veteran. And that makes a difference. You have others, cities who have tried new things, who have tried innovative things, typically who have attacked it from a variety of different places. Los Angeles is an example. You mentioned Mayor Bass when she came into office. I mean, she launched initiatives on, having places where homeless people can stay in extended stays in shelters and then move into housing. And, obviously that has made a dent in this population.
All right, we're going to have to leave it at that. Stephen Maitre, we do appreciate your insight into this. You know this policy, this issue very well, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you. In the meantime here, we do have this post on social media by California Governor Newsom. I want to put this up here. He says, California has dramatically slowed and reduced the growth of homelessness, making more progress than a majority of other states, the nation as a whole, and previous administrations. We're continuing to lead the charge in getting people off the streets and connected to care. So you heard there in that press conference today in Oakland, Newsom was touting the fact that 40 other states over California saw more rapid increases. You see there California at 3.1%. Arizona, we brought you at 3.5%. So I wanted to make sure we covered this story from all angles today.